Welcome to The Savage Truth with Cicely Davis. I am your host, Cicely Davis.
Welcome back, Savages, to The Savage Truth. Happy to be here with you today and for every episode. Welcome to the channel. If you're new, come on back next time and bring someone and tell someone about the show. Bring them back with you next time. Happy to have you. For those of you who are returning, I appreciate you and your loyalty so very much. You keep me going, and believe me, it's really, truly a joy to be here twice a week, minimal, most of the time sharing with you all. As always, I have the same exact ask every single time in the beginning and the end, and that is what? To please like, share, subscribe, and leave a positive review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. For those of you who are new to the channel and do not know about my background, I am a resident of Minnesota, okay? I ran against the horrible Ilhan Omar in the midterm election season. Obviously, the midterms in general was a disappointment, not just for me, but for the party in general, across the board, across the country, I would say. But Minnesota, like so many other states for the midterm elections, became a one-party state as the state House and Senate was taken over by the Dems, as well as Tim Walz, who won another term as governor, Keith Ellison, as attorney general for our state, won another term, and Ilhan as well won another term. So many other despicable political officials, I talked to you about the cat burglar, okay, actually were victorious in the unfortunate midterm elections here in Minnesota. The Democratic persuasion in the state is deep, and it's heavy, and it's profound. Now, if you know me, you know that I'm a former Democrat, having been brought up in the black monolith of existence as so many other black Americans in this country has. I left the Democratic Party during Obama's first term. Just recognize that what he said he stood for, what he promised, wasn't coming to fruition. I recognize that very, very early into his, I would say for sure by second year, that he just wasn't delivering on what he promised. And it just didn't line up with my values. Not casting a vote for him in his second term, obviously. One of the many reasons for my departure was that the lies and the deceit of the Democratic Party was so deliberate, and it was so very punitive and detrimental, particularly to the black race, to black Americans. And to me, it was very personal. It felt personal, and I was offended, and I was angry and hurt that I was lied to, and the truth was hidden, it was covered, it was concealed, and all around sometimes, many of the times just completely rewritten. And so once I was able to get over that hurt and that anger, because after all, a lot of the people who misled me were misled themselves, right? They were also brought up in the black monolith. And so I had to find this space in my heart to have some forgiveness and some grace and recognize that there is this umbrella, this veil of deceit and evil that runs through that party. I began to research and learned about the Republican Party, its history, its principles, and what it defends and what it actually stands for. And it lined up with my specific values, my value set. I learned the real history of Black Americans, the real history of slavery, and the real history of America itself. Its wars, its innovations, its heroes, and many of them were Black. And the ones who were actually trying to write them out of America's history were Democrats, right? Were Democrats. And I learned that Blacks were holding office and leadership within the Republican Party, and Democrats persecuted them and supporting white Republicans and white citizens who supported those Black leaders within the Republican Party. Now, we all know about the impact of Lyndon B. Johnson's war on poverty on the Black community in this country, resulting in 8 out of 10 families without fathers, which obviously increases poverty and incarceration rates, abortion, and poor education. Now, where am I going with all this? Well, I'll tell you. Thank you for asking. Donald Trump came along and had the audacity. Donald Trump came along and had the audacity to speak directly and honestly to Black Americans and ask them, what do you have to lose? Your neighborhoods are run over, pillaged with crime and poverty, horrible education through the public school system as pushed by the Department of Education and teachers unions, resulting in Black children being last in literacy rates and graduation rates. You face the greatest incarceration and crime than any other demographic in the country. You're last in health outcomes and economic outcomes. And Black men in particular, Black men are responsible for 60% of the number of murders, of the murder rates in this country. So let me break that down for you really quick. I've said this before and you know this. And if maybe some of you don't. The Black race, Black Americans make up 13% of the country. Half of the Black race is Black men. And half of 13%, 6.5% of the population in this country is responsible for 60% of the murders in this country. What do you have to lose by betting on or voting for someone else? How can it get any worse? By trying something else, by trying someone else. Now, that serves as a backdrop this week, okay? As Donald Trump bravely and graciously accepts an invitation to the recent National Black Journalists Conference in Chicago. Even though they were late, they blamed him for being late. He came out later, but there was a reason for that. And apparently the Trump administration and the NABJ got into it backstage about some equipment failures, and they're wanting to fact check him in the moment, which they previously had to not agree to. But it was an issue of equipment that didn't work. They failed to produce his opponent, Kamala Harris, as promised. And, you know, it was very attitudinal and hostile. Now, before I go too deep into it, I want you to watch this.
Mr. President, we so appreciate you giving us an hour of your time. I want to start by addressing the elephant in the room, sir. A lot of people did not think it was appropriate for you to be here today. You have pushed false claims about some of your rivals, from Nikki Haley to former President Barack Obama, saying that they were not born in the United States, which is not true. You have told 4 congresswomen of color who were American citizens to go back to where they came from. You have used words like animal and rabid to describe Black district attorneys. You've attacked Black journalists, calling them a loser, saying the questions that they ask are, quote, stupid and racist. You've had dinner with a white supremacist at your Mar-a-Lago resort. So my question, sir, now that you are asking Black supporters to vote for you, why should Black voters trust you after you have used language like that?
Well, first of all, I don't think I've ever been asked a question so in such a horrible manner. First question. You don't even say, hello, how are you? Are you with ABC? Because I think they're a fake news network, a terrible network. And I think it's disgraceful that I came here in good spirit. I love the Black population of this country. I've done so much for the Black population of this country, including employment, including opportunity zones with Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina, which is one of the greatest programs ever for Black workers and Black entrepreneurs. I've done so much, and, you know, and I say this, historically Black colleges and universities were out of money, they were stone cold broke, and I saved them, and I gave them long-term financing, and nobody else was doing it. I think it's a very rude introduction. I don't know exactly why you would do something like that. And let me go a step further. I was invited here, and I was told my opponent, whether it was Biden or Kamala, I was told my opponent was going to be here. It turned out my opponent isn't here. You invited me under false pretense. And then you said, you can't do it with Zoom. Well, you know, where's Zoom? She's going to do it with Zoom, and she's not coming. And then you were half an hour late. Just so we understand, I have too much respect for you to be late. They couldn't get their equipment working or something was wrong.
Mr. President, I would love
I think
you
it's
can
a
answer the
very
question
nasty
on your rhetoric
question.
and why you
I
believe
have
that
answered
Black
the
voters
question.
should trust you with another 4
I have
years.
been the best president for the Black population since Abraham Lincoln.
Now, that was a clip of the opening question. That was the opening question from ABC's Rachel Scott. Now, the panelists were, as I said, ABC's Rachel Scott, Harris Faulkner of Fox, and the moderator was Katia Goba, who is a political reporter of Semaphore. Now, this was a statement on NABJ before the event when they actually announced President Trump as the guest. Now, this was quoting the president of NABJ. His name is Ken Lemon, and I quote, "We look forward to our attendees hearing from President Donald Trump on the critical issues our members and their audiences care about most. While NABJ does not endorse political candidates as a journalism organization, we understand the serious work of our members and welcome the opportunity for them to ask the tough questions that will provide the truthful answers Black Americans want and need to know." Nonpartisan? Are you kidding me? Did you watch the beginning of that? Do I need to have Rick replay that? Okay. Nonpartisan, and yet you have an opening like this one. Now, I love how Trump calls her out on her rudeness. You know, no hello, no greeting, how are you, right? I mean, they showed some clips of her shaking his hand, but for opening question, she just went straight in, and this is supposed to be nonpartisan. And from her example and her line of questioning, what exactly was she implying that Black Americans and the Black community care about the most? DEI questions? The fact that Kamala was chosen because of her melanin and not race? Apparently, according to her, the Black community cares about who's Black and who's not. Apparently, the community cares about defending crookedness of Alvin Bragg and Letitia James of New York. Not inflation, not the economy, not crime, and the impact of defunding the police had in the Black neighborhoods and Black Americans as victims, not the mishandling of the border and how the Biden administration and Kamala shipped the illegals into Black neighborhoods and stripped them of jobs, housing, and resources, piled them into their schools while Black children had to remain home for remote learning, offering opportunities and licenses and health coverage and housing and debit cards to illegals. Not concerned, apparently, about the obvious failure of public education for Black children or how abortion has decimated the Black population. Not concerned with health outcomes where Black women are more likely to have low and or poor birth rates or die at birth and have birth fatalities. Not concerned, apparently, about the widespread issues of heart disease, obesity, and diabetes. The Black community, according to Ms. Scott, apparently are more concerned that Donald Trump doesn't like those who illegally persecuted him. They're just more interested in who does or doesn't like Donald Trump. They may have hurt Bragg's or Letitia James' feelings, right? That's what they were really concerned about, that he may question the authenticity or the qualifications of Kamala Harris as being the leader of this country because of her extreme and hurtful policies that actually hurt Black people. Now, let me remind you, all of those issues, those bullet points that I just named in that list, Kamala Harris is on the exact opposite of all those policies. And again, it's her administration that put those through. This is a partisan attack, without a doubt. It was about being threatened by Donald Trump and his hold on Black men, right? Because it's that demographic that we're actually seeing. You see, it's women. It's women who run the Democratic Party, and it's men who are leading the charge away from it. And of course, the left-wing media is charging the racist narrative on Donald Trump because he stood up for himself and Black Americans. It's a shame because this was an opportunity missed. And I would like to add that, have we ever seen any of these journalists start out questioning that way for the precious Barack Obama? Have you ever seen them start out a question like that for the Clintons? Only Donald Trump gets this kind of rude behavior, this rude attitude, no questioning, right? This go for the jugular question where you're not actually questioning, you're actually accusing. There would not have been a right or correct answer. The whole point was to stand there on stage and grandstand and accuse Donald Trump and persecute him, right? And I think it's really important that we, on this side, we don't take the bait, but we're going to get into that a little later. The event, which could have been an opportunity for constructive dialogue, instead was used to maintain the deep racial divide in American politics, which, by the way, was driven solely by the Biden-Harris administration, which is the bread and butter of the Democratic Party. Racial division, right? But make no mistake, it was the panelists who missed a chance to engage meaningfully with Donald Trump, opting instead for confrontational tactics that did little to advance the substantive change of ideas. This approach only serves to alienate attendees and viewers who were hoping for a more insightful discussion. I believe that there were people in the audience who were maybe questioning Donald Trump and said, you know what? Okay, I have some brothers. I have a grandpa. I have an uncle. I have some cousins. I have some male friends who are saying they're going to vote for Donald Trump. Let me show up with an open mind to hear what he has to say. And that was all ruined by this grandstanding. And it's just so disheartening, and it angers and irritates me to see that. This was a selfish move, pure, unadulterated selfishness, because there were people in the audience who truly wanted to hear from Donald Trump. As I'm sure so many of them are aware of the failure of the Democratic Party. And here was the man in the flesh, up close and personal, speaking to them personally. But selfish as usual and hostile and angry and ugly, they reacted in fear because of the threat of the Trump factor on Black men in this country. And why is that? Why is that? Because, of course, in recent years, there has been a noticeable awakening among Black Americans, particularly Black men, who are increasingly questioning the Democratic Party's long-held promises for decades. And I mentioned the LBJ, for decades. Okay, and let me remind you really quick and input this, because if you don't know this history, if you're first time hearing about this, okay, the big switch is a lie. Let me make sure I say that. But for decades, the Democratic Party has presented itself as the champion of Black Americans. Yet, today, currently, many feel that these promises have not been fulfilled, and they haven't. Let me just be flat out honest and savagely truthful in this moment. They haven't. They have lied. They have reneged on their promises. Issues such as economic disparity, criminal justice reform, and educational opportunities remain significant challenges in Black America. This growing awareness of the Democratic Party's failure to deliver has led many Black men to seek alternatives. They're going towards Donald Trump. Hey, they're finally starting to apply the question, what do you have to lose? Finding a more responsive ally in the Republican Party, which has addressed these issues with policies, actual policies, not personality, not feelings, okay, not headlines, not empty promises, but actual policies aimed at individual liberty and economic empowerment. Let me go out on a limb and say that had these been Black male panelists, it would have gone completely differently, right? This would have fared differently altogether. But that noticeable awakening, that shift, is particularly significant as it disrupts the narrative that the Democratic Party is the natural political home for Black Americans. They don't want Black Americans to know that or remember it. The Republican Party has been making concerted efforts to engage Black voters, recognizing and addressing their specific concerns. Now, this outreach has led to an increasing number of Black men supporting the Republican Party as they feel their voices and their needs are better represented. Oh my goodness, it's so great to see finally this wake up, not about woke, but an actual wake up. This movement away from the Democratic plantation underscores the importance of political diversity and the need for all political parties to be accountable to their promises. It highlights, that's what it does. It actually highlights a crucial shift in the political landscape. And I think that's where the threat comes in, where Black Americans are actively seeking the representation and the progress they deserve. So let me take the opportunity to tell those who insist on remaining loyal to the party that cares nothing for them and only means to further drive them into more poverty, ill health, incarceration, and lack of education and opportunities, that, and hear me good, okay, Kamala Harris is unqualified to be president of the United States. Here's another savage truth. Kamala Harris deserves the criticism for her tenure as District Attorney of San Francisco and as California's Attorney General. As District Attorney, Her record reflects a poor legacy marked by decisions that have sparked more than controversy, okay? She is literally just simply on the wrong side of every issue. She's on the wrong side of every issue that Americans actually care about. Her office's handling of cases involving police misconduct, as well as her stance on truancy laws that threaten to jail parents of chronically absent children, have been viewed as overtly punitive. Furthermore, her tough on crime approach to lead high incarceration rates, affecting Blacks in particular, but disproportionately affecting minority communities, and her prosecutorial history reflects a pattern of opportunism rather than a genuine commitment to justice. Here's the bottom line is, okay, she's just clowning around. She's not at all serious. She's not at all smart, okay? She's just been, in my opinion, very, very lucky. She's figured out a way to climb, okay, the political ladder. She's savvy in that way, I suppose. As Vice President Harris has struggled to carve out a distinct and effective role. She hasn't done that. She's appeared as a mere extension of Joe Biden's administration. Her handling of the border crisis has been particularly problematic. Again, non-existent. Savage truth, non-existent, okay? With critics pointing to a lack of decisive action and clear strategy. I'm one of those critics, and the situation has only deteriorated under her watch and has exacerbated humanitarian concerns and national security issues. Her alignment with the far left elements of the Democratic Party has raised alarms about her political agenda. And her political agenda is very clear. It's very overt. You don't have to think about it. You have to guess. All you got to do is just go back and replay her words. She doesn't believe that children or poor children in the inner city actually deserve choice of education, right? She believes in no fracking. Okay, now she's trying to memory hole some of those issues and backtrack on it. Just play her words. Undoubtedly, her policies would push the country further towards divisive and unworkable extremes. We will lose our republic, without a doubt, if Kamala Harris gets in. Her track record and lack of leadership have left many questioning her readiness and capability to lead this nation, underscoring a belief that she is undeserving and unqualified for the highest office in the land. There is no way Kamala Harris is qualified to be president of the United States. And let me give some savage truth right here. Kamala Harris is not a leader. She is mediocre at best, okay? She's not dynamic. She's not particularly smart or savvy or witty or charismatic. She's a Marxist. She's a socialist. She's a communist. She's a poor representation of American leadership, governance, and America's political history. Savage truth is, I didn't want Joe Biden for president. I didn't want Kamala Harris as vice president for the last 3.5 years. And I, and a whole lot of other Black people, don't want her as president, not even for 3.5 minutes. Let's move on. Hamas said its political leader Ismail Haniyeh was killed in an Israeli strike in the Iranian capital of Tehran, a major development that throws the region into an unpredictable and dangerous new phase. Israel has neither confirmed nor denied being behind Haniyeh's assassination. Now, in remarks Wednesday, a defiant Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu vowed to keep fighting. He has done that since the beginning, saying his country, quote unquote, is ready for any scenario and has delivered crushing blows to its enemies. Now, Haniyeh was the second figure of an Iran-backed group assassinated in the past day following the killing of senior Hezbollah commander in Lebanon. Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, vowed to avenge Haniyeh's death. And I quote, "You killed our dear guest in our house and now have paved the way for your harsh punishment," is what he said, end of quote, referring to Israel in that comment. Now, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said the U.S. was not aware of or involved in the killing of Haniyeh. Now, y'all know where I stand on this issue. You know that I love my Jewish sisters and brothers. Whenever I talk about them, I instantly smile. And I fully support our number one ally. Because when I think of Jewish people, I think of my Savior. So I just have to smile. Now, had you had the same urgency, okay, Blinken and this administration, when this unprovoked attack happened in October 6th, and had you actually dealt with the actual terrorists responsible, Hamas and the like, this could have been solved quick, swift, and in a hurry. Israel has always had the same stance, and that is this: we will defend ourselves with all our might and our right to exist. Now, we still have hostages and loved ones we need to get back, and it only takes courage and standing with our friends to take care of those who only mean to destroy us and our allies. And by the way, this is another reason to not elect Kamala Harris as president. Her presence would only encourage Hamas in this situation, and I believe it already has. Do you truly want Kamala Harris in negotiations with terrorists? Do we believe she has the strength, the intelligence, or the presence to deter Iranian leaders, Putin, Xi, or anyone else? Now, let me just say that, because this is really important to stress, because this is, like I've said in previous episodes, contrasts and comparisons. When Donald Trump was in office, we saw no movement, right? Putin didn't try it. Xi didn't try it. Iran didn't try it. We get Joe Biden in and Kamala, and they're pushing all kinds of boundaries, right? They're taking all kinds of leaps. They're poking and they're pushing us, right? So presence actually does matter. Does anyone actually believe Kamala Harris will choose a star, strong, and capable cabinet that will strengthen America's presence around the globe? This giggling, simple-minded word salad of a woman? One thing's for sure, a DEI pick won't and can't get the job done. It has only produced mediocrity and failure so far. Think about it. Please like, share, subscribe, and leave a positive review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. And as always, be bold, be strong, be faithful, be true. Till next time, I'm Cicely.
The Savage Truth with Cicely Davis is a production of Front Page Magazine and the David Horowitz Freedom Center. Reproduction of this podcast without express written consent is prohibited.